Hi, welcome to another episode of the Lorenzo's Music Podcast. I'm Tom, and on today's show, I am talking to one of the people who runs a project that I'm fully invested in the sense that my band has completely switched to only using it, which is Ubuntu Studio, a Linux-based operating system for creators and artists. And basically, let me have him tell you more about it. Why don't you tell the people who you are and what it is you do?
I am Erich Eickmeyer. I am the project leader for Ubuntu Studio. I'm I'm on the leadership team for the Ubuntu Linux project, and all sorts of stuff like that. I also help my wife run Edge Ubuntu, which is the educational version of
Oh,
Ubuntu. So
really?
yeah, that's kind of new since we last talked.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
she's
I didn't know
she's
that.
project leading that one, and I'm helping her.
Oh, wow. And here's the thing, too, is that's one of those things where, much like this particular, as they call them, flavors of Ubuntu, if you don't use it, you don't really know much about it. And I
Mhm.
remember Ubuntu, which was the educational version, the one that comes pre-built for learning and tasks and things for, I mean, kid-centric. We can say that, right?
Kid-centric, it kind of branched out into college and
Oh,
for
it did.
teachers
Okay.
as well, that kind of thing. So educators and students alike.
Yeah, and it has more of like the built-in like programming, math calculations, and all that kind of stuff built into it, right?
Yeah, science, all sorts of stuff.
Right. You know, all those
Yeah,
other things that I know
yeah,
nothing about.
yeah. It's
Well,
tons of stuff.
okay, and then specifically, the one we're here to talk about is the one that I use, and our
Mhm.
entire band has switched to, which is Ubuntu Studio. Now, this is one that is built specifically for musicians, artists, and filmmakers, photographers. It goes on. Basically, if you create it, it's meant for you. Now, first of all, uh, just do you remember how this came about? I know you took over the project years ago, but
Mhm.
when they built different flavors, originally it was for different desktops, which was like the way that it looked. So
Mhm.
there was the Kubuntu, which used KDE. There was Ubuntu that used GNOME. Um, and then there was Xbuntu that used XFCE. Now,
Yep.
do you know how it came about where they're like, well, if I'm a musician, I have to install all this crazy stuff to get it to work, to get the sound card to work, to install the software and all that. When did somebody go, why don't we just build that and make that a download or an
So
installable thing?
it's funny you mention that because in it was in 2007 was the first release back with I want to say Breezy Badger.
Okay.
Um, and that was the first release of Ubuntu Studio. Now, it was an alternative download in that it could be downloaded and then not everything fit on a CD. So after you downloaded it, then you would also download the audio components that via a script.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I took some early looks at it, and it was gray with some blue accents, and then but then it also had a different sound scheme from what they had in GNOME 2.0 at the time. So it
Hmm.
was really interesting. It used Jack, and they didn't really have Pulse Audio yet.
Hmm.
So it would be switched between Jack and OSS or ALSA, one of the two, and then
Yeah.
Pulse Audio came later on. But they were just building Ubuntu Studio on top of the Ubuntu with GNOME at the time. It
Hmm.
wasn't until 2012 with Precise Penguin that we got our first live download, first live CD. And but it was in DVD form because it was way too big to fit on a CD.
Yeah.
They at the time switched to XFCE because the people running Ubuntu Studio at the time did not like the direction GNOME was heading in, did not like
Hmm.
Unity. It was a little bit too heavy
Oh,
for
so that was around
what
the time that it went to a Unity-based sort of GNOME desktop.
precisely. Yes.
Okay.
Unity was first introduced in 10.10, and then
Hmm.
and it was introduced before GNOME 3.0 was even a thing. So they jumped into that, and the Ubuntu Studio project was like, nah, not for us. We're gonna go with XFCE, and so that's what they did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then getting into this before we move on to the actual, like, let's talk about the music and the sound cards and all this. But I know just in the past couple of years, you actually had switched it to KDE. And I
Yes.
remember you saying that the way KDE is now, that it's actually small enough to use. It takes up less space. I guess I don't
Uh,
know how to word that.
well, it wasn't really space. Space wasn't really the issue. It was a matter of resource usage at the time.
Yeah.
And this was back in 2020.
Hmm.
We released our first KDE Plasma release with 20.10,
Hmm.
and that was the reason we did it is that all of the team was already using Kubuntu and putting the Ubuntu Studio stuff on top of it.
Oh,
And so,
okay.
yeah, and it was just like, well, why don't we just look at switching? And, doing some inspection, it ended up having the most creative tools around the Qt library, which is
Uh-huh.
Qt, as well, it's also known as, which is what the KDE frameworks are based upon. They
Hmm.
use a lot of Qt dependencies. So what we decided to do was go that direction. That way, it would be not loading Qt libraries on top of a GTK desktop, which XFCE had, but
Hmm.
already having a lot of that. And we found out upon initial checking between XFCE and KDE, or I'm sorry, Xubuntu and Kubuntu. We
Okay.
went
Yeah.
between those two and just checking the initial resource usage. It was a difference of something like 50 megabytes.
Okay. I remember you
So,
mentioning that. Yeah.
yeah, something really negligible. So we were just like, well, and this is with Plasma 5 as opposed to Plasma 4, which is what they had around the time that they switched to XFCE.
Hmm.
And we were like, well, this looks like it's probably what we need to do, is go this direction. So we might as well just jump on it. And the stipulation was I had to do all the work on the seed to make sure it worked properly. And the entire month of May of 2020 was just like getting that taken care of and making sure that we had a stable build and all of that, making sure that everything functioned. And lo and behold, here we are now with a fully functioning KDE Plasma desktop on with Ubuntu Studio, and it runs brilliantly.
Well, and it even is designed to, if you didn't know, you'd be like, "Oh, this is still Ubuntu Studio," the way it was. I
Right,
mean,
right.
it looks and acts very similar. I do know that, and so my band here, we just because I am the one that uses like in his day-to-day life
Mm-hmm.
Ubuntu and stuff like that. And the rest of the band, they use it for recording, and that's the extent of their knowledge. They've learned how
Yep.
to use it, they've learned how to record with it. So we only use the LTS versions because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to have to be updating their systems every 6 months.
Valid.
But I do know when the first one came out, there was a lot of problems with if something crashed, it became some weird loop of warning labels that happened.
Oh,
And that
yes,
seems to be
yes.
fixed now.
Yeah.
But that was, other than that, I was just like, oh my God, I love it. And also it's weird too, because as you were saying, most of the people working on it were using Kubuntu. And it's like, is that just a thing? Because that's how I got into it. I didn't use Ubuntu. I used Kubuntu when I first started
Mm-hmm.
in Breezy Badger. And then I heard about Ubuntu, moved to that. Is that just like, do artists use Kubuntu too, just because it's a weird, different desktop? I don't know.
So,
That's just kind of ironic.
the way I see it is that artists like to be able to customize everything. They like to be able to
Yeah.
make everything their own thing. And they create inside their workspace. They create inside
Mhm.
of their music or their art that they're making. And so, as far as I'm concerned, Plasma is the best desktop to be able to complete that creation environment because you can almost control every single pixel down to the
Yeah.
way you want it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's and I'm like I said, I've always been a fan. The funny thing is that was when I was trying Linux. It's the stupidest thing, but it's why I chose it because I was like, I want that little bouncing icon when you click
Mm,
on something that's next to the cursor.
yeah.
I mean, what is that's like voting for someone because, well, they seem nice,
Right.
knowing nothing about
Could
it.
have a beer with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, and now going into that, so you've talking about the switching to KDE. Now, here's another thing that's kind of relevant in it. Now, with the stuff that's involved with Ubuntu Studio, and you've talked about how it came about, how it had been created, how you used to have to install it. Now, with the items that are included in Ubuntu Studio, what is the how do you decide what gets included with it? I mean, I know there's the stuff that's been there for quite a long time, but there's still things that change. Like, what is a process for someone to go, hey, this is a creative piece of software I would like to submit or have included, or do people who work on it do this? Like, how does that happen?
So the answer is yes.
Okay.
Both of those. So it's one of those things where people will be on Matrix, and between myself and Len Evans, who also helps develop with the project, Ilo de Grudel, she is like an artist, and she gets really into the art side of things and that kind of thing. And then there's me, who covers mostly the photography, a lot of the audio stuff, along with Len, and a few other things. Well, it's one of those things where between the three of us, and sometimes a couple more, who do mostly package maintenance, that would be Ross Gammon, Dennis Brown. We're kind of like, between the three of us, like, you know what, this is a really useful tool. Let's look into it. We don't have anything that's really duplicating that process. So let's take a look at what it would be to include it. And is it going to be too big? That kind of thing. So for instance, and sometimes we have people coming across on the Ubuntu Discourse, so like, hey, this is kind of useful. We could we include this in Ubuntu Studio? I'd be like, let's take a look. Do we have anything else that's duplicating what that does? Not really. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Recently, I found out that when we had Ubuntu Studio controls, or Studio controls later, Len had made a way to get NetJack working with that, it was a Zin something or other, but it was a way to be able to use Jack over a network. And I was just like, well, this is all command line. We can't really do that using this GUI utility we have now, especially when Jacktrip exists. Now, Jacktrip touts itself as a way to be able to do band sessions over the internet using their service.
Explain.
Oh yeah, jacktrip.org. So they have a service that they sell, that they have pricing on, that you can use to for the lowest latency possible to be able to do band sessions over the internet. And they really capitalized on this during the pandemic.
Well, however, as everybody was looking for it, yeah.
Exactly. So Jacktrip is also open source and can be compiled into a Linux system. So it's in their Ubuntu repositories already, has this whole GUI stack, using a Qt interface. And it can be used in such a way that you can have like one server and then a whole bunch of stuff going to it. Like you have a computer connected to a mixer, and then have in a remote location, have another computer that you want to be able to use everything off of that mixer or audio interface. And it can use that audio for instance, I own an XR18. Okay. I've devised a way, it's on my blog, ericheickmeyer.com, where I took a Raspberry Pi, configured a Jack and Jacktrip server on it, and made it so that it will plug into my XR and get all 18 channels in and out into the interface, and then I can access it remotely, like from a front of house position on another computer, getting extremely low latency audio across the network.
Now, okay, let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. So you're saying, let's say in another place, somebody I recorded this guitar line. I'm able to connect to it, access that guitar line that they've recorded?
Oh, no, in real time.
In real time. Okay.
So if they're playing it back for you, through on the mixer, and then you are in, say, across the room and want to record it, but you don't want to string a huge amount of cables.
Even that's a good idea. Cable. That's true too. How many times am I so sick of going, oh, we got to set up a stupid mic and then get the levels and all that? You're saying that okay, all right.
You see what I'm saying? You got your stage box on the stage, you got your front of house, and you can, I have an X-Touch. The X-Touch is actually built in such a way that it can use an XR as a actual mixer, as the mixer interface. And then, so I can do that, I can still record using Ardor on Ubuntu Studio from across the room using nothing more than a network cable or even Wi-Fi.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I got some studying to do after this. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
just take a look at how I did it on my blog. All I used was this little guy right here, a Raspberry Pi 5.
Okay. All right.
And it works perfectly. I got down to to the point where it's the round trip on it was almost indiscernible. So like you're at front of house, you need to run music through the PA. Well, the PA is on stage. You're not going to string a whole bunch of wires across. If you've got like one network cable or even just Wi-Fi, you can throw a Spotify playlist on the computer and connect that using patchage or something into what Jack Trip is sending and receiving to that audio, to the stage box on stage.
I love this. I'm already just like thinking about my practice space. I'm just like, oh, how could we set that up? Because we have so many cords running everywhere and doing all that kind of stuff. And it's so funny because while it seems ridiculous to go like, oh, I need to record something across the room, big deal, you hook up a cord. And it's like, no, after a while, you're hooking up like several drums, keyboards, microphones, PA systems, all this kind of stuff. And then still going into a sound card, making sure everything's mic'd up. You got cords all over the place and it's annoying. And after a while, it just it's clutter. And I don't know, it can affect you.
And from a live recording type of mindset, you have your stage set up and then you're having to run a snake completely from the stage back to front of house. And those things are heavy. And this eliminates that completely.
What is the, I guess, the load that it has on Wi-Fi and running over the network? Like, is there a minimum that it needs, or is it something where it's just like, oh, this is too slow? Or I guess
I would say give it a gigabit,
okay,
a gigabit Ethernet, or even Wi-Fi is capable of much more than a gigabit. So most everything you have nowadays is just 1 gigabit.
Okay. All right. And I could sit here and ask you questions about this all day, but we're here to talk about more than that.
Yeah.
But that's funny. So we're just talking about how packages got installed. And you're saying this was just a conversation that someone had, or this does that, and it got loaded into. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. We're always open to suggestions right on our discourse. You can go there, discourse.ubuntu.com. And we have a whole section for Ubuntu Studio off of the flavors subcategory. So yeah, all you have to do is go on there.
And speaking... Well, and I've gone on there many times, and I try not to just go on there when I'm having a problem, but I still do.
If I had a nickel for every time I've walked you through something.
my funniest was I had just done an update, and then all of a sudden my touchpad stopped working to the point where like I couldn't click on anything. I would reboot it and it wasn't working. I don't know if you remember this story at all.
Yeah.
And it turned out I had my Bluetooth mouse in my bag and it was being pushed, so it kept like basically I had to come back tail between legs. Hey, sorry about all the stuff that I was asking before. It was my Bluetooth mouse.
Yeah, so. I saw that after the fact because I want to say I was away on a trip or something, and, or I was at another job or something, and came back. I saw that. I was like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, people were going, it could be this, and this, and I'm like, no, I tried that too, and I'm like, this is so weird. I just didn't update.
If I had a nickel for every time I did that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We've all been there. But anyway, so I just wanted to state, like, yes, it is a good place to go to also talk. And I like to jump in there and sometimes just see the conversations happening. Anyway, now the other thing I want to talk about is over the years, there have been several things. We talked about Jack before. Now, Jack, the one thing Ubuntu Studio did, first of all, was when you used Jack to hook up Ardor, say, to a sound card and all that. On most systems, the problem is if you had Jack running, you could not use anything else. It grabbed hold of your sound card and you couldn't use it. With Ubuntu Studio, you could do that, open up a browser, still listen to YouTube, all that kind of stuff. You could play stuff over a VLC player. You could still use the sound card. Then a couple of years ago, you and I were at the Ubuntu Summit, and you told me about there's a new way to control the Jack input, and there was what was it, like a sound system, or it had some generic-ish name, but it was something where you could actually just run it instead of running Jack, configuring it, and all that kind of stuff.
Right, and that came out about that spring. We actually ended up switching over to it. it was PipeWire. Now,
Mm-hmm.
PipeWire, it comes by default in all Ubuntu flavors now. And what PipeWire did was it replaced Pulse Audio and Jack. It basically, as far as the Jack 2 developer is concerned, it became Jack 3. And it simplified the entire process. We made it so that the minute you turn on an Ubuntu Studio computer, that it's running that Jack layer and the Pulse Audio layer and anything that can speak native PipeWire. It can talk to that, and the underlying audio system doesn't know the difference. You can open up like Patience, which is a Jack graph, and
That's what I was
it will
just going to
see
bring up. Yeah.
everything equally. Anything that's running sound, it'll show you where it's putting that to, and you can even take that and move it somewhere else if you want to.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing when we moved from the previous LTS to the newest one, the one that I'm running now. We were so used to using that particular Jack setup, which again, I forget the name of it. It was just like sound
we
system.
had Studio Controls, which
that's what it was. Studio
Yeah.
Control was. So we were using that, and then I opened up this new one, and I'm like, "Where is it? What's happening?" But then it was like, "Oh, it worked." And then I saw Patience. It's hard to say. Patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that thing, it's like, oh, this is much easier. And it's it's similar to Carla. It's similar to, using when you actually you dug into Jack and actually opened up the controller. So it's like hooking wires up in the background.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
Super handy. There were things that I didn't realize that I wasn't unhooking until I started using Patience. Until I started using the patch thing.
Yeah.
Like when we ran Ubuntu or OBS for our live streams, I didn't realize that I was still running a 2-channel sound card instead of just running because I would connect the master out
right
to our OBS, but I didn't realize till later on when I was looking, I'm like, oh, it's still running the 2-channel out. So it was still, it was like doubling up the drum channel or something like that. It was really weird. So anyway, that wasn't a question. That was just me talking about using it.
It's cool.
But I do like the new setup, and I really do enjoy that. So, and what made you go with the patch thing that I can't pronounce?
Patience?
There you go. Thank you.
Patch
just gonna rub it in my face that you can say it perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made us go with that was just because I thought it was nice looking, and not only that, but you could drag two stereo channels at once somewhere. And that's what's nice about it. Whereas any other graph I've come across, you have to do one at a time. This lets you do 2 at a time, and it's really nice like that. It just looks nice. So it's got a bit of eye candy with it. But also there is a session manager, Ray Session, which is in by default. Yeah.
Okay, so I was all confused because my name is Ray, my last name is Ray, and then I saw that folder in the home folder, and I'm like, did I make this? Is this because my name is in the terminal? Like, why is this here? Thank God for solving that mystery. Okay.
So Ray Session uses the same graph that Patience uses.
Okay.
So it was very easy to go with that graph as opposed to any of the other graphs for something that's using a graph in a session manager. And what's nice about that is it remembers all of your connections, so that if you just have everything up at once, you can save what it thinks are Jack connections, but are actually PipeWire connections. Uses the exact same API, gets everything connected right.
Okay. Wow. All right. No, I'm still just happy that you solved that weird folder mystery, because I don't want to go deleting things either. Anyway, okay. So, and the other thing too is, on top of that, you guys have plugins installed. You have plugins for the audio system. So there are things like, distortion pedals, compressor, all that kind of stuff. So how do you include the plugins? How do you decide what gets in? Because that's more of a musical decision rather than even just like a coding or an operating decision. So how does that get decided?
So there's a couple of things that I look at. I look at, one, what are most people in the Linux audio world using? 2, what do we have in the repositories that is either provided by Debian or uploaded by, like myself, with Ubuntu? what do we have that's available? If there's something that is new and shiny, it's not available yet. Do I have the time and energy to package it? So that's
Hmm.
always a trick. Is do I really have time and energy to take care of that? Because I'm really the only packager in Ubuntu Studio. So everything kind of goes through me anyways. So it's like, okay, do I have time to take care of this? Now, there, like for instance, what you are referencing is the Guitarix uh,
Hmm.
plugin collection. We also have the LSP Linux Studio Project plugin connection and collection rather. And still in the repositories, there were a few others like the Invada Studio plugins that
Hmm.
really got included by default last release 2504, or was it the release before that? I don't know, but it was right around that time.
Okay.
But it was already in the repositories. I'm like, well, this is a old well-known studio that developed these plugins and they were available for Linux. Why not include these?
Okay.
So I decided to do that, and just a few other things, just trying to figure out what do people want, what are people using. A lot of people are using bridges to use Windows plugins when really you don't need to. Everything that is native works just as well,
Yeah.
especially LSP in my opinion, because it
Hmm.
just has so many parameters that you can adjust and use, and you don't even need to use those. You can use the simpler ones. Um, there has been a resurgence in the CAF plugins, which are very well known in the Linux audio world.
Yes.
Um,
I will say
they
they have, and arguably for me, and it's because of the way I use it, where I tried to get off of using CAF, and for a bit I did want to go straight LSP and maybe some X42, and try and just use those. But CAF has the best compressor for what I do with them. It has
mhm,
a compressor that is unforgiving. You can
yeah,
squash it is and do you can just do so much more with it. It will push the edge. So I
yeah.
can't get off it completely because that compressor is just really useful to me. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue. Sorry, I just
Anyway,
wanted to
so
say it.
CAF has seen a resurgence in development, and because they had stalled out for a while, and
Right.
they have a
Yeah.
maintainer again. So
Oh,
I'm
really?
I'm just kind of keeping an eye on it. We can't really include it by default because it breaks a couple things, but I did have to
Mm,
do some maintenance in the packaging side of it for some things that were done, like they changed the build process and things like that. So I had to make sure that that was done. Um,
okay.
at least we were accommodating it from our side. So did that, but then there's always a few other things as well. So it's just kind of like, what do we need? What is the best thing
Hmm.
what's the best tool for the job at the end of the day? Is
Yeah.
kind of the lens that I'm always looking at it through.
Hmm.
And being in live audio production for 31 years, that's kind of the lens I always look at this stuff through.
Yeah. And I got to have Guitarix on here or try and get a hold of them because I want to ask them specifically because I don't think you have an answer for this. But when we do an update, there's always one pedal that they decide to get rid of that I'm using. And it's happened to me like 3 times now where I'll be like, oh,
Oh,
we're going to upgrade. And then all of a sudden, why does this song we're working on sound weird? And if you stick with like the normal pedals, it's fine. But if you
mhm.
find one where it's like, ooh, that does a really neat thing, I always feel like those get taken away from me. Anyway, that's not a question for you. That's a question for them. Why
Yeah,
do they do it?
yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I've just got the downstream, and then they got the upstream. So,
Right.
yeah, and that's another thing. Even like with X482 plugins, which are developed by Robin Garris. He actually
Hmm.
goes by X482 on IRC. He's a great guy, friend of mine. He I always look at his stuff as far as because he's always implementing stuff that's really useful, like the AVL drums. He developed the plugins for that, and that's a beautiful,
Oh.
like actually sampled from different drum kits drum plugin. So like you send it a MIDI signal, it'll send out this drum or this cymbal or what have you, and you can make drum beats based on it. And
Huh.
that's something we include by default and have for a while. And
I'm unfamiliar with that one. Okay.
yeah, it's check it out. It's if you open up Carla and look at the plugins, you just search for AVL, and it will come up with several drum kit plugins, and it that open up the user interface. It's literally a drum kit. You can tap on the different drums or cymbals, and it will make the sound of that kit.
Okay. All right.
So
wait, is this like the Black Pearl and the Red Zeppelin kit?
that's the one. Yes.
Oh, then I've been using that for years. Never mind.
Oh, there you go.
I just never heard it called AVL. I just call them by the drum, because in the new one, he's got some new ones. Like he's got the Buskman's Holiday, which is like buckets and boxes and stuff, which I really like that. Okay, good. I'm well aware of that. The other thing too is Robin makes, we have fully switched to using his equalizer. I think his equalizer is brilliant. One of the better ones out there. So we've switched to that fully. Now, talking about this as well, there are people who do love to go like search for VSTs and stuff. We're purists because basically when we started out, to be able to share projects through GitHub, we all had to have the same operating system and the same plugins. So we all used the default plugins that came with Ubuntu Studio. So we were all on a level playing field. Mm-hmm. And we've just stayed that way, even though now everybody's installed it and we could just go, hey, install this. But we've never done VSTs. I've tried to use VSTs in the past. I don't understand how to install them. Do you need to do something special? I know in one operating system, it was just drop your VST into this folder and it will work.
It should still be something similar to that. I believe it's if you make a .vst folder inside your home folder, you can just drag and drop them in there. I'm not sure. I don't use VSTs that much myself. I use mostly LV2 plugins because they're just Linux native and they just work. That said, between VST2 and VST3, those are really the way to go. VST3 is a lot newer, but we're looking at definitely a struggle between licensing in that case. Steinberg did something very weird with the VST3 software development kit. They made it so that it has a proprietary license. However, you can also license it under GPL if you plan to do it this way, because they got a lot of complaints. And they're like, either GPL or this. And, what we typically do, at least in the Ubuntu and Debian space, is like, how does this work? How is this compliant? We're not sure. So while there are reimplementations of it to get around the licensing issue, it's like, because really you can't do a license something with a proprietary license and an open source license at the same time. It just does not work in most cases. So the folks in Debian, for instance, have figured out that this works. At least I think. I'm not sure how it works, but I see some VST3 stuff coming through. And I'm like, okay. We're not installing it by default. We'll install the LV2 version, or if there's no LV2 version of the VST2 version, that kind of thing. But we default to the LV2 because we know for a fact that license is going to be okay for use in an open source operating system.
Okay. So it's kind of like, in my head, what I thought of was, it's like when Trent Reznor released all of his stems under Creative Commons and let people remix his new album, but then people started using these samples on their own stuff, and then the record company was like, you can't do that. And it's like, well, yeah, they can. No, they can't, because that's on this album that we let out. It was a weird area where, and even Trent Reznor was just like, don't block them from using it. He was just like, let them, and they're like, but you can't do this. And it's like, exactly. I did do that.
And it's always that weird thing between the publisher and the artist. It's like, the publisher's like, we own you, and artists like, no, you don't. That kind of thing. It's always that back and forth, and what they know that the fans want and the fans need, and the publisher is just like, yeah, but what about our money?
Yes.
So it's always just that weird thing, which is why I respect bands like yours that are doing everything you guys can do under Creative Commons. It's just a breath of fresh air.
Well, and it's also why we've moved to using only free and open source tools. And now even the next process I'm into, which is trying to get that open source spread into like where we present ourselves, where we're I mean, of course, being musicians, still to connect with audiences, you do have to let your music be heard everywhere, because not everybody the entry point is different for everyone. But like,
Right.
I'm in the process right now of changing our website to a Jekyll-based website. We've been open sourcing our actual Arter sessions on GitHub for years now. Like, you can
Oh
actually
yeah.
download them and get the full Arter session. It's not just Creative Commons. It's like, oh no, you can get the source material and everything that it uses. You can get that material, or get that software, all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
that's where we've been expanding more from just discovering Creative Commons and going, yes, you're free to use it. Plus, downloading is not really a thing for music anymore. So
Not really, no.
that was the whole point of it. Is it was people were like, oh, you're stealing music by downloading it. And it's like,
Yeah, Spotify's a thing now, and you don't have to worry about it.
yeah. And well, I mean, even so many other channels too. And just I don't know. I don't want to go into the whole streaming thing. That's such a gray area, but it's like, it's one of those where when I see people who remove their stuff from a platform, and it's like, yes, I get that. And I understand there's a point behind it, but a lot of fans, they're just like, well, now I can't listen to their music, that because they don't have the time or the knowledge or understanding to study the concept of what a closed platform is, how it works. They just go, this is where the music is. It's like, it's like people I used to do tech support with, where I'd go, okay, open your browser. And then they'd go, how? And I'd go, right there, you push that Firefox logo. And they go, well, no, that's the email button. That's, that's just the way people understand
both?
things differently. Yeah. So, because when they open it, it shows their email, and then they can browse the web. Anyway, so the other thing too is we also use Ubuntu Studio because we can make all our videos using open source software on it, and also release those under Creative Commons. Now, one of the things that I've been using and is still just a powerhouse is Kdenlive, which has always been a part of Ubuntu Studio, but it's funny because it was KDE based.
Yeah.
So
that's one of those other things why we were just like, and I went to the team early on. I was like, why do we have so many video editors? Do you guys realize how much room this is taking?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because we had OpenShot and we had what is it called, PTV, and we had Kdenlive, and I was like,
Kino, and
it was just like, I was just like, guys, we've got to whittle this down.
And a lot of them were super old. Like at one point, didn't you have Cinderella on there?
Yes, that was a long time ago. Yeah, in fact, when I tried it, went back when I first came onto the project with in 2018, I tried Cinderella, and it was like, this application has closed. I'm like, you have a bug? It doesn't even launch?
Yeah. Nope.
So I was just like, okay, forget it. We're getting rid of that one. It's just not even working. And I looked upstream. It wasn't even being developed anymore. So I'm just like, that one's gone.
Yeah.
So we chose to go with Kdenlive because it's got it's simple to use, but then it's got so much else with it. And it goes with KDE's motto of simple by default, powerful when needed. And that's echoed in Kdenlive because it does exactly that. I use it professionally. Every week I'm working on for people I work for. I work for a church, and I do their sermon podcast and their sermon video. And so I use Kdenlive to do the sermon video, but then I export the audio from that into Audacity, and then just tag on the front part of the basically the intro to the podcast onto the front of that, and then export that as an MP3. And boom, I've got exported the video, I've exported the audio, and we've got our podcast and our sermon video for YouTube, and it's all done. It takes me a couple hours each week.
No, and the other thing too is the person who develops, and also I'm always learning how to pronounce these things. Everything has a weird name, and you're saying it's Kdenlive, and I've always said Kdenlive.
There's multiple pronunciations for that.
Oh, there is.
Kdenlive, Kdenlive. I've heard it both ways, and I just I interchange it in my head.
It's like when I met Paul in Prague at the Ubuntu Summit and learned from him that it's not Ardour, it's Ardour.
Yeah, it's just the British spelling with the U. I mean, if we go ARDOR, that would be the American spelling, but he's
Right.
British, so he did it that
Yeah.
way.
And so anyway, with Kden, I'm going to say Kdenlive because I'm used to it.
Yeah, go for it.
The other thing about it too is that it also is a powerhouse in the sense that it can. I've yet to run into something where it goes, I can't load this video, or this
Yeah,
isn't.
exactly.
Basically, it goes, hey, this is encrypted or encoded a different way. Do you want me to switch to that? Is the most trouble I run into.
Yeah, I run into that weekly. I'll import the video that we have. My default is 30 frames a second. I'll say this is recorded in 5994. Do you want to switch to it? I'm like, yeah.
So, beautiful. Yeah. And so just huge kudos to them. But that does make me think of my next question, which was because I was going to move on to the graphic programs, because here's the thing with Kdenlive, which I only really started getting into video editing a couple of years ago. So I don't have a huge background video editing. Now, graphics and illustration, which once again, all of this is being done in Ubuntu Studio. I do everything for my band, from artwork to videos, using Ubuntu Studio to get down to the point of this whole conversation. But I feel like graphic editors have kind of fallen off in general. I mean, there used to be like, here's a new graphic editor, here's a vector editor, here's a new program. And now really we're down to, and this might just be my own ignorance, but like GIMP and Inkscape. And there's Krita, of course, too. But I feel like not a lot of stuff is happening in the graphic software world anymore. Do you feel the same way? I mean, do you hear more about it? Because you're the one who gets contacted by people to include stuff.
So the thing is, you know, and this is one thing that I've brought up with the team, is we've got Krita and GIMP, and they are very similar applications. You can do the same thing with both. But the problem is Krita is going more towards the Illustrator, and GIMP is more towards the photo or graphics editor. So it's one of those things where there's some constant development in both. Krita is constantly, in fact, if I bring up, that one's actually available for Android too.
Yeah.
I have,
but I tried that though. Have you tried it? Because it kind of just seems like a ported version of the desktop. I mean, it works, but I don't know. Maybe I tried.
It's a ported version of the desktop, and it does work best if you have like a pen stylus. Okay. So and you have to also have a tablet that's compatible with that. So, and I've played with it. It is pressure sensitive, like you would expect on the desktop version if you had it like on a Surface tablet or something. So it's exactly the same that way. And it works great. So, you know, as far as illustration goes and drawing and stuff, it's definitely the go-to. GIMP doesn't exactly lend itself to that because it's for editing already existing stuff if you got it.
Yes.
So, and so that's one of the reasons why GIMP is still around, because it's familiar. It's what people already know. And then, of course, there is, what was the other one we were talking? Inkscape. Inkscape for vector graphics.
Which in my own personal opinion, this is me, they did an update to it, which was great. But the thing is that it's hard to use now. And I mean that from a GUI standpoint, getting into it, getting stuff to work, stuff that I used to be able to alter. It seems a bit buggy to me after they updated it. And the thing is, and again, this is my opinion, but I did use Inkscape a lot. It was very simplistic and it did the job. Like it was no flash, no frills. Now I feel like they've added some frills and it kind of got in the way of just what it did. And again, that's just me, but I am a vector illustrator. So
sure.
It kind of bugged me.
Yeah. And, you know, I ran into that problem a little while ago. I was trying to edit a new version of the mascot coming out for the new 2510 coming out in October. And I was just like, okay, where'd this tool go? It's not in this menu, but it's in this pane now. And so you have to just kind of, a lot of paradigm shifts. And 1.4 is going to be included in Ubuntu Studio 2510.
I did hear that there was an update to it. Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be included. So it's got a new version. And, you know, as far as development goes, GIMP is still ongoing. They're 3.2 now, I want to say they're coming up on. And they're constantly adding features. And I want to say it performs better now than it ever has. So there's still active development on it. It's just honestly not as apparent. Like they switched to the GTK3 toolkit finally after years of that being out, even though we're clear to GTK4, which is the current now. And it's so funny because GTK stood for the GIMP toolkit initially. So everything was based on that. And now we've got the whole desktop environment for GNOME using GTK, and the very program that's based on is running behind on their toolkit. So it's just like, it's one of those funny things where and I think a lot of that is because they get to a point and they need to keep it stable for a while, because that's what people are expecting, especially with a cross-platform application such as that. All three of the applications we've talked about for illustrating are cross-platform. You can get on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and it's just one of those things where you got to keep it to a point where people can jump to it and they're familiar with it already, especially if they're coming from, for instance, Windows, where they're not going to where it's not going to be as performant because they're really writing this stuff around Linux, but it's going to still work. But once they get into the Linux world, it's much more performant. And not only that, but they don't really have to pay for their operating system. So it's that much better to, it's just, the financial incentive for that is why I jumped to Linux to begin with some 13 years ago. So, yeah.
And now, getting to the end of this conversation here, what are some of the things to expect? What's coming? Basically, I'm just trying to pump you for information here. What's on the horizon for Ubuntu Studio these days? Anything you can talk about?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff I can talk about because we're coming up on our beta very soon. And we've got, so this is kind of interesting. So the low latency kernel is no longer a thing, even in the long-term support release. Yeah. So the Ubuntu folks, the Ubuntu kernel team, to their credit, they had been maintaining the low latency kernel, which was first introduced by Scott Lavender of Ubuntu Studio. He was one of my predecessors back in 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. And he worked with the kernel team at the time to get that in there. And they had kept it maintained for multiple uses, not just for music production, but for multiple different reasons. Even servers could use it. They had kept it maintained for a very long time. And just last year, we got to the point where the generic kernel had the not only low latency patches, but the real-time patches included in it. And so it was just like, okay, now we're to the point where we can start sunsetting this low latency kernel, because the generic kernel, if you put a couple of extra boot parameters into it, it will be a low latency kernel. So I spoke with the kernel team a couple times about that. The guy I talked to was no longer with Canonical. So we came up with what flags needed to be used. And just recently they added another flag that probably needed to be used to make it even better performant for real-time operations. And now the generic kernel, starting with what came out in 2504, and we had actually started doing it in 2410 for Ubuntu Studio. The generic kernel, with a few extra kernel flags that are provided by default, actually turns it into a low latency kernel. So even with the long-term support release, it actually includes a package now as of 24.04.3 that it includes a package that installs a couple of these extra kernel options onto it, so that you have a low latency kernel still, and the transition should have been seamless. So, so you'll use, like, for instance, because you use the LTS, you're now running the generic kernel along with those extra flags that make it a long-term or make it a low latency kernel.
Okay,
you are.
All right.
That transition was done seamlessly. And in 2410 and 2504, we introduced a graphic interface to be able to tick some checks for which of those boot parameters you actually want to use. Like, for instance, an artist or a video editor might not want to use those extra items on a laptop, for instance, because that it does consume some higher amounts of energy.
Mhm.
It's not like huge amount, but it is some. And when you want to save battery, you want to save battery.
Yeah.
So it's one of those
But
things
it's not
where
going to be like you went from 99% to 30% in 5 minutes.
No. Not by any stretch of the imagination. So
although I did have a laptop that kind of was like that, and I ended up sending it back, and they're like, well, yeah, that battery doesn't run for a long time. It wasn't that fast, but anyway, sorry. It wasn't.
Yeah. So so we have that tool, which you'll see if you jump from the long-term support to the regular releases. But it will also be available in the next long-term support release. But also, we introduced some more coming up in 25.10, being able to adjust some of the jack parameters. Now that can either add latency or take away latency or change how it behaves. Even like when you connect something or start an application, you might not want it to automatically connect stuff. And we've had that request before, so now you can disable that. There's a few other items as well that I can't get into simply because I don't have it right in front of me. So,
gotcha. Okay.
I'm running 2504, which doesn't have that. But you've got that. We've got a few other items. That's all in the audio configuration tool, Ubuntu Studio audio configuration. Let's see. Since you're on the long-term support release, starting with 24.10, we introduced a dummy audio interface that you can use to basically send all of your default audio to keep it out of your recording audio. And then if you still wanted to play something back from, say, Spotify or something, you could send it to that dummy device. The dummy device could then be sent via a monitor back to your back to whatever channel you want. So you can actually have your desktop audio on something separate on a separate channel. And you don't have to do it.
I'm going to ask you right now, just because you're bringing this up. So there's a thing that's been bugging us for a while. We do a live stream every Wednesday from our practice space. We have title cards that have sound on them, like things that pop up for like, here's this segment, ba-dum, 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 all that kind of stuff. We cannot hear it coming back into the room. Are you saying I might be able to route this back into the sound card to come out of our mains?
Yes.
And set it up. Okay, good. Because that's been bugging the living. We'll sit there and we have to like cheer along with. We're like woody woo, but we're just standing in a silent room while everybody else is seeing and hearing the title card. It's a weird thing, but I would love to be able to fix that. It's one of those things where it's like it's not the end of the world, but it just bugs us.
Yeah, and you don't have to have it going into your DAW, but you could have it going into your mains, for instance, like directly in. So that's
amazing.
one of the ways you can do that.
I love watching that's the problem with having to do the LTS for the band, because I keep up with all this stuff and I keep watching all this new stuff that I get to use eventually. And then it's just like when you get to update your phone every 2 years, you get it much like I did. I got the Pixel 9a and they just came out with the Pixel 10. Thank you, world.
Galaxy S23. Oh, the S24 isn't out now. Dang it.
All right. Well, basically, I want to thank you for not basically. I don't know why I said basically, but I actually want to thank you for coming out tonight and talking with me. This has been great.